sure feels like selling exhaustion to me. Time for your daily market news and analysis. We're going to look at the charts. We're going to look at Bitcoin. We're going to look at the Bitcoin dominance charts, the total three. But before we do that, what I would like to just throw out there is we've had two major negative news narratives in a row, back to back, in the same week, and we could not push lower. We had the tariffs being announced yet again, as well as the inflation report being higher than expected. And both of these things on paper are very bad, but it really didn't do anything to price action. In my opinion, this is a sign for selling exhaustion. And when we get some positive news, in my opinion, things are going to look very good. But let's look at the charts and see if we can find any support or contrary evidence to support these claims or combat them. So let's start off with Bitcoin dominance. Now, Bitcoin dominance, by all accounts, technically made a higher high. It did make a higher high. But when this was happening, and it was happening live, it was on top of critical levels of support, or sort of like where you would draw the line in the sand as a technical analyst. Bitcoin dominance broke above this. But I was not willing to call this a breakout because I understand who runs the market. And that's how I always am filtering, is who is in charge of the market and how do they move and why do they move. And the truth of that is the apex predator has always ran every single market. And when you have this sort of like viewpoint of you don't have any information that they don't already have. You're not going to get information that they don't have prior to releasing it. That's how it's always going to be. So I sort of view the market as though it's rigged in that way, and that's okay. You can still make a lot of money as long as you understand how the game is played. So the reason that I was unwilling to call this a breakout right here when we went up to 62% and even waked even higher is because I understand that the apex predator likes to do this. They like to go to wherever like a critical level is, wherever technical analysts will draw a line in the sand. They'll go slightly above it and then break down. Now, so I was very cautionary right here at the top. I too am going to be cautionary down here as well. Okay, so I'm not going to call this a breakdown just yet either, although things are looking very, very good. And of course, in order to get true proper alt season, we need Bitcoin dominance to break down. That has been a criteria. Bitcoin is still sitting at $95,700 as of the time of recording, and it's just really just filling out this nice little bottom on top of the 100 moving average. And everything is in full on bullish posture, or very close to it, in my opinion. Today is the full moon, or yesterday rather was the full moon. And those who don't know, typically the full moons are the local bottoms, not always with a crazy amount of accuracy, but you do see like a huge correlation for sure. And it's something to keep in mind. And then typically how these things go is in the next few days, in my opinion, we're going to shift out of the bearish energy of the month and we're going to shift into the bullish energy of the month all the way into the new moon. Now, am I predicting that we're going to local top at the new moon? No, but I would be looking for opportunities at these price points. Ultimately, the fact that we had all this tariff, we had all this inflation, we had all of this $200 billion got wiped out from the markets, and still we held a higher high. I think that this is a very good sign. I think that selling exhaustion is pretty much here. As far as from a technical perspective, where we need to get to is $98,500. I want to see daily body closes above this price target, and this will take us to the next leg higher. In my opinion, by the end of February, Bitcoin is going to be reaching upwards of $118,000. Now, the question is it going to bring the altcoin season with it, or is it going to suck the liquidity out from the altcoin season? On one of my live streams, we sort of outlined two different scenarios. Scenario number one, altcoins go with it. And scenario number two is it sucks the altcoin liquidity as it goes to 118,000. But either way, the next big macro move, in my opinion, for Bitcoin is 118,000. right now, I'm definitely with how Bitcoin dominance is looking and how the total three, which we're going to look at in just a second, I'm definitely strongly leaning towards scenario number one. Now, is it going to be like the alt season? We will see. But ultimately, I am very bullish between now and the end of May. Sell in May, go away. That is a saying for a reason, and I think it's going to continue to be true. Typically, in the traditional markets, with the stock market, cryptocurrency, June, July, August is very boring, choppy at best, and sometimes you have pretty bad crashes. Even just the last from May until September, it was just grueling and down, and this was like, if anyone was a part of this, this was a really crappy part of crypto, of like, we just had a little bit of hope, and like, you think that it's starting, but here we are, just waiting. Taking a look at the total three, in my opinion, this is looking very, very good. And another reason why I am very much leaning towards scenario number one, because this had a violent back test of the prior range. And in my opinion, this, both sentiment wise and structure wise, has a very similar feeling that the C19 crash had. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But having a violent back test of the prior range, sort of a band-aid ripping off moment. If you don't know what the total three is, it's everything that is not Bitcoin and Ethereum. This is what we would measure as the altcoins, right? And it's on top of the 200 moving average. This is a critical level, and we are right there as to getting, we need to get to about 950 billion for the critical level to sort of really start working our way out of here. But this, my theory right now, this is looking like a V bottom. And either way we go, I am very bullish from now until May, whether it's the true, proper, real deal alt season or some sort of variation of that. Now, as far as sentiment and the C19 crash, like we said that we were going to talk about, to me, one of my specialties, I would say I have two specialties of like bread and butter, and that would be Wyckoff accumulation. Wyckoff distribution is my bread and butter from a technical perspective. But as far as like my other specialty is emotional intelligence and understanding retail, understanding sentiment. And just like we talked about in our video, my top 10 lessons learned over 10 years in 1 minute, check that video out. Number 7 was retail is always wrong. And I would like to go back from the 2017 bull run, the 2018 bear market, and this 2019 retracement. Very much the sentiment was very much the same, of like, everyone thought that this moment right here was the bull market. That's what everyone was saying. Like, we're going higher, we're going to 100K, this is it. So much hope, so much euphoria. And then we back tested the prior range. We had a violent, one of the scariest V bottom back tests that we've ever had in the history of ever. And there was the same thing. Even before that, people were like, it's over, it's done, it's broken, it's different this time. Violent V bottom before starting one of the craziest bull markets ever. To me, that's what this was. Like, this was an overextended retracement. As far as sentiment, everyone thought that this was the bull market. We just had a violent back test in the prior range. Now, you might be like, well, Bitcoin's at a new all-time high, so how is that true? And I'll say, yes, that is true. But when we look at the altcoin season, specifically the total three, absolutely is not. And it sort of has the same sort of feel of a retracement that people think is the real bull market. You have a violent back test of the prior range after the halving. This to me feels like the start of something pretty special, especially like just circling back to all of the negative sentiment in the market. Think about how negative retail is. Like, every single crypto creator on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitter, every single person, every time I go live, there is 5 people in my comments saying, is alt season canceled? It's different this time. We're not going to have an alt season, but there's too many coins. Like, all these different things that everyone is saying. And to me, it just circles back to retail is always wrong. To be clear, I too am retail, just like you are retail. Everyone that's not BlackRock, Fidelity is retail. But where I perhaps am different is I'm constantly trying to analyze the market, not from getting news sources, but trying to analyze the market through the lens of the apex predator and why that they're moving the way that they do. And what they're constantly doing is manipulating people's emotions via fear, via greed. And we got all the way down to 35 on the fear and greed index. We were not this low since Japan cut the rates, which coincidentally was also the last bottom that we had. So to me, that was it. That was selling exhaustion to the maximum. You have a scary event and you just cannot go any lower. You cannot sweep the lows. That is what Wyckoff is all about. It's all about supply and demand and accumulation. The apex predator is constantly trying to grab a little bit more liquidity, like are we sure? And in distribution, trying to grab some at the top. In my opinion, this was absolutely selling exhaustion. And I think something pretty special is about to start. Now, one thing I do want to be clear of is alt season. When we think of alt season, am I saying that 11 million coins are going to pump all at one time? No, I am not. When I say alt season, the right coins are going to pump. Okay? There is a lot of nonsense in the market. I understand that. And that's why I think it's very important to pick the right projects. Now, I'm not going to tell you which ones to pick, but I'll give you some criteria to look for. Is the development active? Is there low to no inflation on the project? Have they been around for more than a year with a nice bottom? Good Fibonacci's, good Wyckoff accumulation. These are the three things that you should be looking for, in my opinion, to determine is this a good project that's really doing something with low to no inflation, price equals supply plus demand. If yes, then they have a chance of doing something special. But absolutely no. 11 million coins are not going to pump. But just like XCN did a 20x in 10 days, we will definitely see that in this next phase, in my opinion. Follow me for more, you savages.